So good evening, everyone, and thanks very much for joining us today on this webinar, where we will be presenting our proposal for the Rayleigh Solar Farm. So my name is Chloe, and I'm the Community Liaison Manager and also a project developer here at Aura Power. So I'm also joined by Chris, he's our UK Development Manager, and also Andrew, who is our planning consultant from Axis. So we have chosen to continue using an online platform to present our plans and answer any questions, but we are subsequently happy to meet in person as well if you would find this useful. So before we go into the proposal itself, I just want to explain to you how this webinar will work. We will take about 30 minutes presenting the plans and then open up the virtual floor for any questions you may have for us to answer. So your microphones will be muted for all of the session, but you should see a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen where you can type your question for us to then answer out loud. So we'll only be answering questions once we have presented our plans, though please feel free to type your question at any time during the session. However, I would advise waiting till the end just in case your question is covered in our presentation. So just to note that this webinar is also being recorded and will be available to watch again on our website. So if you are watching the recorded version and have a question that has not been addressed, please do contact us. We'll also make the presentation slides available to download on the website. So the purpose of this webinar is to present our initial plans and to understand local views, concerns and suggestions through a series of further dialogue, incorporate the feedback into our final layout that we will then submit to Rochford District Council. We'd also like to ask you to complete a short feedback form, which we'll send round following this session. Sorry, moving on to the next slide. Okay, so who is Aura Power? So we are a renewable energy developer. We're based in Bristol and we were founded in 2013. We now have around 30 staff in total and a dedicated UK team. We have numerous utility scale solar farms and battery storage sites in development, not just in the UK, but also in the Republic of Ireland, Portugal, Italy, Spain, Canada, Lithuania and the US. So we are a joint venture partner of IB Vote. They are an engineering firm that's built over 1 gigawatt of solar farms worldwide and developed projects on a global scale. So that equates to over 3 million solar panels with over 80 solar farms of varying sizes, of which more of those are actually situated in the UK. So they have a lot of experience. And with the experience of IB Vote and the financial backing of a company just like them, we have the capability and financial security to see a project all the way through from its development process to construction and then on to operation. As a responsible developer, our remit is to develop the solar farm design whilst engaging with the local community and subsequently obtain planning permission. IB Vote will construct and then operate the solar farm once it is built. So why solar? So as we all know, we are in a climate and ecological emergency, and it's important to recognise why solar can play such an important role in the future of our energy sector and our environment. In June 2019, the UK government became the first in the world to set a legally binding target for net zero emissions by 2050. In April, it announced a new legal target to slash emissions by 78% by 2035. This autumn, the UK hosts the COP26 Climate Summit, regarded as the most significant climate event since 2015 Paris Agreement and an important opportunity to demonstrate global climate leadership. The latest landmark climate report from the UN released in August underlined the importance of taking urgent action to tackle climate change. As we transition to a net zero economy, electricity demand is forecast to increase threefold due to the move away from fossil fuel-based heating and transport. Solar power is proven to be the cheapest form of new electricity generation available, and government policy states we will need to build 3 gigawatts of new solar every year to achieve our decarbonisation targets. So approximately that equates to around 100 solar farms of this size being built every year in the UK alone. We've already seen a substantial increase in wind and solar generation, with renewables outpacing fossil fuel generation for the first time last year. Renewables now account for about 40% of total electricity generation in the UK. Furthermore, as large-scale solar developments are no longer supported by subsidies, and this helps to reduce energy prices for everyone. The south coast of Essex is threatened by rising sea levels, and parts of it could potentially be underwater by 2050. Essex County Council are taking action to make Essex carbon neutral by 2050, and we are encouraged by their recent report, which embraces large-scale renewable energy installations such as solar and wind farms. This solar farm will help with the county commendable target of reaching 1.43 gigawatts of large-scale solar by 2030. As well as generating clean, renewable energy, this solar farm will enrich local biodiversity, continue the use of agriculture via sheep grazing, and restore the soil to an even better condition than its previous one under intensive arable farming after the solar farm has been decommissioned. So this solar farm will have a capacity of up to 30 megawatts, which we estimate will generate enough electricity to power the equivalent of over 9,000 typical Rochford district homes and save nearly 10,000 tonnes of CO2 from entering the atmosphere every year. Okay, so the location of our site. So as you can see from the map on your screen, our proposed site is located between the railway that runs to the north and the A127 that runs to the south, with the town of Rayleigh to the east. The solar development itself covers approximately 33 hectares of land, with a significant amount also used for biodiversity enhancements, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. The land is owned by a landowner who is looking to diversify their land use, as farming in the UK is becoming increasingly challenging through more unpredictable weather and market conditions. Whilst the land is currently used for growing cereal crops, it is not classed as best most versatile agricultural land and is all subgrade 3B. During the lifetime of the solar farm, the land can continue to be used for food production with sheep grazing. As the fields will be left fallow, the soil will benefit from being rested and improve its natural long-term fertility. Finding a suitable site for a solar farm can be very difficult, as there are many constraints that need to be sensibly considered and balanced. This site does fall within the Metropolitan Green Belt, which is designed by the planning policy framework to prevent urban sprawl, but is balanced with the importance of increasing the use and supply of renewable energy. So finding sufficient capacity on the electricity grid is one of the most difficult challenges in the UK, and we have been fortunate enough to secure a grid connection with UKPN connecting directly into the substation at Rayleigh, which is just 250 metres to the northeast of our site. So the land is largely well hidden, enclosed by the Fairglen interchange, the A127 and the other interlinking A roads, restricting many of the views from residences to the north, south and west of the site. There are, however, some residents with potential views from the east of the site, and we invite those to engage with us constructively to help shape our plans. So just to elaborate slightly on why we've chosen this site. So as well as the grid connection and suitability of the land, we believe this site is also suitable for a number of other reasons. So I've already listed the landscape in being between the railway and the busy A roads. There is also good existing screening with an ability to screen further through tree and hedgerow planting, which we'll go on to a little bit later. There are also on-site power lines which lead to Rayleigh's electricity substation just nearby, where we have secured a grid connection, as I've just mentioned. It also provides a number of opportunities to boost biodiversity, which again we'll talk about a little bit later on. It's also relatively close to the town, which can benefit from clean renewable energy. There's also excellent levels of solar irradiation in this part of the country. And there's also good access off the A127 with good major linking road networks nearby. So I am going to pass over to Chris now, who will run through what makes up a solar farm and our design.
Thank you, Chloe, and good evening, everybody. I hope you're doing well. So what makes up a solar farm? As I'm sure you're aware, there are lots of different components that make up solar installations. Probably the most important one of them is the photovoltaic panels. These are set out in rows with enough space in between them and underneath them for sheep to graze. Solar technology is advancing rapidly, and we'll be using south-facing fixed tilt bifacial panels. These allow for higher efficiency in converting sunlight to solar energy. The panels will have a lower edge of a minimum of 0.7 meters high and a maximum height of 3 meters. Between each row, there will be a minimum gap of 2 meters, which will enable the land to be grazed underneath throughout the lifetime of the project. There'll also be fencing, which will be a 2-meter security fence around the perimeter, will allow space for small mammals to pass through. There'll also be access tracks, which will endeavour to use existing access tracks where possible. Any new access tracks would have the appearance of typical vernacular farm tracks with a crushed stone surface and will be 4 meters in width. The tracks would be allowed to grass over in time, thus increasing rainfall permeability. Inverters will be located either underneath the panels, and their purpose is to convert power from DC to AC, so it can be used by the grid network. Transformers will also be installed throughout the site. They're used to step up the voltage so that it can be distributed into the grid network. This allows for a more efficient transfer of energy across the grid network. Storage units will contain spare parts. These will be located in the vicinity of the substation. There'll also be infrared CCTV, which will be positioned on poles around the perimeter for additional security and safety measures. They look down the fence line and not into people's houses or gardens. And of course, there'll be a substation, which is where we connect into the grid network that feeds into the larger substation just to the northeast of our site. The compound will contain a number of electrical infrastructure components and will be surrounded by a security fence and then by tree planting. Our connection is at 33,000 volts, so the substation will be contained in a small discrete structure, either as a brick building or one similar to the one you can see on the bottom right of the screen. There'll also be a temporary construction compound. This will be a temporary area within the site for construction, deliveries, and site and welfare facilities. This will prevent vehicles from congesting the road. And finally, there'll be a series of underground cables that connect the panels to the transformers and then onto the substation immediately to the east of the site. So moving on to the next slide, please, Clay. Thank you. So the panel arrays cover around half of the total site and will only disturb a very small proportion of the ground, less than 1% in total, as it's only the posts that are pile driven into the ground for the panels to sit on top of. This allows plenty of space for sheep to graze safely beneath them. The grass can still grow under the panels on a UK solar farm, despite the misconception that the shade prevents it from doing so. And indeed, the panels can afford the sheep some protection from bad weather and shade in sunny weather. The substation is located on the east of the site, as close to the existing substation as possible. This is where we connect the electricity into the grid to supply clean energy to your homes. While already relatively discreet, trees will be planted around the perimeter of the substation to provide screening. We will be using monocrystalline silicon-based panels, which have up to 96% recycling efficiency. The operational period of the solar farm will be 40 years. Once the end of the operational period is reached, the solar farm will be decommissioned and the land returned to its former state. We believe it likely to be in a better state than it was before construction, as vastly reduced quantities of pesticides and fertilizers would have been used throughout the solar farm's lifetime. In addition to the solar panels and associated infrastructure, the proposal would include a number of ecological and landscape enhancements, such as new tree planting, species-rich grassland, low pasture grassland and wildflower areas. We are retaining all existing hedgerows and trees in and around the site and allowing hedgerows to grow for screening purposes. The existing vegetation that runs along the side of the main road will be reinstated as part of the highway extension by Essex County Council, a completely separate development. The improved grassland beneath and around the panels allows us significant gains in biodiversity. Wildflowers will be sown to further boost biodiversity and attract much needed pollinators to help tackle the ecological crisis. Buffers are included to protect existing on-site ecological features such as ponds, ditches, hedgerows and trees. There is one footpath to the southeast of the site. This will not be affected by the development and access will be retained. There is no security lighting when the solar farm is operational. The only lighting that may be in place will be during construction. However, as construction will mainly take place during daylight hours and is likely to be in the summer, lighting requirements will be minimal. It should be noted that as solar farms are very quiet, we do not predict any adverse effects on residential sectors nearby. Next slide, please, Clay. Thank you. So these next few slides show the site from a number of nearby viewpoints. These locations have been selected by our landscape architects in reference with the ZTV, so zone of theoretical visibility, which you can currently see on your screen. The red line demonstrates the extent of the solar farm boundaries, and the other colours show where it could be visible from. As you can see, the views to the proposed solar farm are limited to a small number of locations. 3 of the photos are taken from viewpoints without the solar farm modelled, and 1 is a computerised image from the top of a nearby footpath. So next slide, please. Thank you. So this photograph is taken from the other side of the railway line to the north of the site, between the housing estate at Langham Drive. The solar farm is located on the pylons you can see on the screen. And as you can see, the existing vegetation completely screens this field from view, meaning there will be no visibility this side of the railway track. Next slide, please, Claire. Thank you. So this viewpoint is taken in Wickford, around 1.7 kilometres from the nearest proposed panel by Doublegate Lane. You can see in the middle of the screen where the pylons cross the site, but due to the existing vegetation and topography, the solar farm will be very difficult to view. Next slide, please, Claire. Thank you. So this viewpoint is taken approximately 2.2 kilometres to the north of the site on Raworth Lane, where existing electricity infrastructure can already be seen. Again, you can see that the low-lying nature of the land from this direction offers good screening alongside the existing vegetation, and the solar farm will largely be unseen. Next slide, please. Thank you. So at this viewpoint, we have modelled an interpretation of the existing photo with the solar farm modelled in. This is taken from the top of the footpath on Great Wheatley Road, which has the most prominent view of the proposed development. So at this point, I'll be handing over to Andrew, who's our planning consultant, who'll be taking over on the next few slides.
Thank you very much, Chris, and good evening, everyone. I hope you're all well. On this slide, we're going to talk about the indicative construction and access route, which is illustrated on your screen now. The construction of the solar farm will take place over a 3 to 5 month period, likely during the spring or the summer months. If consented, we are likely wouldn't start construction until around 2023 to enable us to discharge conditions, etc. But we will notify the local community well in advance of this process. The route shown here is an indicative route coming off the Fair Glen interchange and via the A127 at the south of our site, as illustrated on screen. There will be no vehicles coming through Rayleigh, as I'm sure you appreciate. Where possible, we would use the existing field access tracks to reach areas of the panels further within the solar farm site, and compacted gravel will be used where existing access tracks are not adequate for HGVs, as Chris has identified previously. A traffic management plan will be implemented prior to the construction, and construction traffic will arrive on the site in the first few weeks of construction process, after which the number of HGVs are normally expected to reduce significantly. HGV movements will only happen outside of peak travel times, and a contact number will be made available for any residents who have any concerns over this period. As the solar farm requires little maintenance after construction, there will be minimal traffic on the site during the operational phase of the development. Go to the next slide, please, Chloe. Thank you. There is abundance of evidence showing that the maintenance practices under solar farms can significantly improve the local biodiversity, whereas addressing the UK's biodiversity crisis by providing habitats and food for wildlife. This not only is due to there being less intervention on the land compared to that which is farmed heavily for potential pesticides and fertilizers, but also due to the measures developers like Aura Power are putting in place to promote biodiversity at their solar farms. As the panels sit on piles, as Chris has identified previously, there is minimal disturbance to the ground, which allows the grass to continue to grow and the potential for sheep to graze beneath them. Arable fields can be converted into species-rich pasture and also act as a stable store of carbon, a dual benefit to combat climate change and boost biodiversity. As the fields are left fallow for the life of the solar farm, the soil will be kept healthy, boost carbon sequestration, and after the solar farm has reached the end of its life, it can be removed with up to 96% of the farm actually recyclable. The land will then be returned to its previous state or better than before. I suppose a solar farm is a bit like a wildlife reserve. The land is being taken out of intensive agriculture production and largely returned to nature. It is worthy of re-stressing that we will build the panels and the infrastructure around the existing hedgerows and trees at the site. Vegetation removal will be minimal and only needed to access in between the fields. The fence will allow for small mammals to pass across the site and not be prohibitive, and the arable land within our development will be converted to grassland, allowing substantial gains in biodiversity. Wildflower areas will be added around the site, and we will also be planting a tree belt around the substation to enable better screening. This will allow a significant net gain in biodiversity and greatly benefit the local wildlife in the area. The full biodiversity net gain calculation will be submitted with our application once we've finalised the layout and undertaken the necessary calculations. A recent study by the Solar Trade Association discovered that some solar farms had up to 6 times more pollinators than the adjacent fields without solar panels on it. With this in mind, there's opportunity to install beehives, and if this is something you might be interested in helping us with, we'd love to hear from you. We have the next slide, please, Chloe. Thank you very much. We're anticipating a landscape environmental management plan will be one of the potential conditions attached by Rochester Council. This essentially will outline the management regimes that we put forward in our soft landscaping plan, and also enable a clear understanding of who will be responsible for the management of those regimes during the lifetime of the solar farm. The importance of this is basically to ensure that the biodiversity net gains that we're proposing during the planning application and its dissemination are carried throughout the lifetime of the scheme. Next slide, please, Chloe. So at the time of going to this public consultation this evening, we've undertaken a range of environmental and technical assessment work, and this is continuing at the present time. So these survey findings are very much the here and now as we have them at the present. In terms of ecology, it's anticipated the proposal would not negatively affect the ecology, habitats or species, and that through the proposed enhancement creation, there would be biodiversity net gains. In terms of landscape, it's anticipated the proposal would not negatively affect landscape character, and due to existing landscape features, as mentioned previously, the site is well screened from most visual receptors. Noise. Baseline noise monitoring has been undertaken, and the predicted noise contribution from proposed development will be calculated once the layout has been finalised. It's anticipated that during the construction, which includes the vehicle movements and the operation both daytime and nighttime, noise levels would not unduly affect noise sensitive receptors in the area. Go to the next slide, please, Chloe. Moving on to flood risk. The site's entirely located in flood zone 1, which is the lowest risk of flooding. The proposal would not increase the risk of flooding either on the site or within surrounding areas, simply due to the fact that the panels are lifted up above the ground, and the existing ground would retain its permeability to soak away any runoff which arises from rainfall. Heritage. As illustrated in the landscape ZTV, there's limited viewpoints from where you can see the proposed development, and there is very limited designations in and around the area where you get any kind of views from the site. Therefore, we anticipate that given the limited intervisibility between the site and the surrounding heritage assets, there would be a less than substantial harm on their setting. In terms of buried archaeology, dialogue is ongoing with the archaeological officers at Essex County Council, and the results of the geophysical survey are currently being prepared. Glint and glare, it's anticipated that there's going to be no impacts expected on any dwellings, roads, railway lines or aviation in the area, so no impacts are anticipated. And then agricultural land, all of the agricultural land has been assessed and classified as subgrade 3B, which means that it's not the best or most versatile agricultural land. On the basis of the above and the lack of environmental technical impacts and the merits of the proposal, which Chloe and Chris have identified previously, such as the ecological and landscape enhancements, there would be some social, economic and environmental benefits which, in line with national policy, should be considered favourably when determining the application. I'm now going to hand you back to Chloe, who will continue our presentation.
Thanks, Andrew. So I am going to talk about local benefits, which I'm sure you'll all be pleased to hear about. So as well as the enriched biodiversity, which Chris and Andrew have mentioned, there are also a number of local benefits which this solar farm could bring. So firstly, the solar farm will contribute over £50,000 in business rates to Rochford District Council every year. Jobs will also be created during construction of the project and within the supply chain. There will also be ancillary benefits arising from contractors from outside the area staying locally and using local services. We welcome any local suppliers who would like to be considered in our tendering process. So if you are one or you know of any, please do encourage them to get in touch. So in addition to these, we are also proposing a voluntary community benefit fund. So this is worked out on a megawatt basis, and we offer a £350 per megawatt. That's index linked per year, and that's for the lifetime of the solar farm, which in this case is 40 years. So this is to be spent locally on social and environmental projects. Typical projects that have been funded by other solar farm projects might include things like energy efficiency, measures on public buildings, play equipment for children. At one solar farm in it funded a fibre optic broadband. So there are a range of different projects which it could fund, and that's something that we'd be open to speak about further. So that could amount to around £10,500 a year, and for 40 years, like I just mentioned, obviously that's about 420,000 in total. So the administration of these funds generally would be managed, well, they would be managed locally, in this case, potentially by the town council or an independent trust. And we welcome your suggestions for how this money could be best used. There is a question on that in our survey, but also please do feel free to contact me directly. So we also want to help infuse the younger generation and educate them on the importance of renewable energy. So to do this, we are setting aside a pot every year, which is £2,000 from the fund for educational sessions with local schools and site visits. So we use an existing, very experienced company to deliver these sessions, and all their sessions are linked to the national curriculum. So if you are any of our attendees or know of any teachers from any of the local schools who might be interested in these sessions, then please do get in touch, as we'd love to hear from you. So not too many slides left. So timescales. So at the moment, obviously, we are consulting with the local community, which is very important to us, and also a crucial part of getting our design right to then submit a full planning application to Rochford District Council. So following this consultation, we'll look to incorporate the views of the local community. And like I say, there'll be a series of further dialogues and interested parties into our proposal and revise or add to our designs if necessary and feasible. So we'll then finalise our proposed design, and we aim to submit our planning application in the next couple of months, hopefully before the end of this year. Rochford District Council has already provided pre-application advice, and we will continue to work with the planning officer and specialist consultees once submitted to address any comments raised. After the application is submitted to the council themselves will undertake their own consultation process and invite local residents to comment on the application. So our aim is to submit a proposal which not only complies fully with the local plan and the national planning policy framework, but one which the local community can support. The planning determination period for developments of this scale can take anything from 13 weeks to 32 weeks, but we hope to have a decision towards probably the spring next year. So if approved, we will likely look to start construction probably at the earliest by the following year, as it wouldn't be likely, I don't think, timing wise for next year. So if you would like to speak to me in person, as I mentioned at the start, I'd be happy to visit you at your property to continue any discussion. So please do not hesitate to get in touch with me if you feel this would be useful. Okay, so we are at our question time. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. We'll now answer any questions that you have. If you haven't already done so, then please do type your question using that Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. I'll then read out that question aloud, and either myself or Andrew or Chris will answer the question. So we hope to answer all of the questions during this session, but if we're unable to, then please do contact me. To save time, I'll probably just read out the questions that we may not have already addressed. If we do have time, then I'll answer those as well anyway. Okay, so we've got one question that came in a little while ago. So good evening, I live in front of your proposed site high up on the hill on Weston Road. Okay, so which direction are the solar panels facing? I'm sure it's facing the A127. Yes, you're correct. So the panels, as we mentioned at the start, are south, well, they're fixed hill and they're south facing, and they're bifacial panels. So yeah, they're facing the road. Okay, next question here. One from, okay, are a vote not involved with the solar farm at Great Bursted? Identical claims as to sheep screening, etc., but although started in 2014, began generating in 2016, half complete. It has since submitted 9 planning apps for change, but no further development, no trees, no sheep. So I did see your question just shortly and had a little look into this. It's not one of IB votes, and it's certainly not one of ours, and it looks as though it's one that's been submitted to Basildon Council. So you know, we can't speak on behalf of any other solar farms, but I think what we probably can do is try to reassure you in the measures that we put in place, and also that the measures that Rochford District Council put in place to ensure that we are sticking to our plans. So they fall into the discharge of conditions, which Andrew mentioned earlier. They're basically a set of requirements that we must adhere to in order not to breach our planning application. One of those is the landscape and ecological management plan, which we'll be compiling, and that's a really detailed document which outlines the management of the landscaping that we're proposing and how that will take place and the maintenance of throughout the operation of the solar farm. It'll then be up to the council to decide how often they want to review that plan, or how often they want to come to site and review it and ensure that it is being kept to. I don't know if Andrew or Chris want to add any more to that. If not, I will go on to the next question. So we've got just a comment here actually from a member of the Essex Beekeepers Society. So yeah, I think you've joined as an anonymous attendee, but please do get in touch with me after. My email address is on the website, and we'd love to hear from you and have further conversations about that. Okay, so a question from Barbara. Thanks, Barbara, for writing in this question. So you have asked, has enough thought been given to aircraft in the area with Southend Airport a short distance away? Surely the glare of the panels will be a problem, not for the aircraft, but for local residents. You live in Weston Road, which is directly to the east, yes, and look directly down to the site. Okay, and yes, we like to say we are aware of the screening, and we obviously invite you to discuss that with us after. But Andrew, would you like to take the comment regarding the glint and glare and provide some reassurance to Barbara there?
That's absolutely clear. Thank you very much. As I mentioned in the assessment work that's ongoing, there'll be a glint and glare report, which is currently in the process of being undertaken, but the initial findings have confirmed that there wasn't going to be any impact upon aviation in and out of Southend Airport. So would be quite confident that there's not going to be any glare arising from the panels, which would cause a aviation safety issue.
Thanks, Andrew. I think it's also probably worth noting that obviously our application will be reviewed extensively by the specialist consultees at Rochford District Council. It might be the case that the airport is included in that list of consultees. I don't know for sure, but certainly the planning department will have more of an idea on that. Okay, so another question here with regards to effects on birds and wildlife. Some emerging reports have linked solar panels to negative effects on bird and wildlife. The angle the panels are set at are changing the effects. Sorry, what angle do you anticipate your panels being set at? So as we spoke about before, the panels will be facing south. Typically the angle is between, I think, 10 and 15 degrees. Is that right, Chris? We can share obviously our drawings of the solar panels. They'll be submitted with our application. They're technical schematic drawings that you'll be able to see. I think one note that I'll say on birds in particular, so we've often had quite encouraging seen encouraging reports, particularly from the RSPB, who generally are supportive of solar farms due to the more dramatic effects from climate change. So there's a balance, there is, and they've also released reports and findings on the positive impacts and on birds, and also, you know, the increased biodiversity that we have on site. And I think there's a recent report, and I'm happy to share these reports with you after if you want to get in touch, that they haven't found any negative effects on birds at some of their solar farms, which they've been doing some investigations on. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so another question here. This one is now from Craig. Thank you, Craig. Thanks for this exciting presentation. What inputs impact the lifespan of the solar farm, i.e. why 40 years? Okay, that's a good question, Craig. Perhaps that's one for Chris. Would you mind answering, Chris?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Craig, for the question. So I think that although panel degradation, so the efficiency of panels, is very, very small, generally about 0.25%, and we expect that 0.25% to reduce as you know, technology improves. There will be a reduction in the efficiency of the solar farm over time, and there will come a point whereby it would be more economic to develop an additional solar farm elsewhere and pack up this current one and reinstate the land as per the hopeful planning consent that we hope will be awarded with. And I think as well, in terms of, you know, what we're applying for temporary planning permission. So just to be absolutely crystal clear, this won't be a permanent feature. This will be, you know, hopefully a transition to a low carbon or a no carbon future over the next 40 years, by which time, you know, the electricity industry and the energy industry may be very different. So yeah, this is just a temporary application that we will be making soon.
Sorry, thanks, Chris. Cool. So another question here. The council is Basildon Council, subject to this. Sorry, I'm not sure that quite makes sense. Basildon Council is an adjoining council. It's not the council that we will be submitting our plans to. It's Rochford District Council. Aaron, thank you very much for popping your email address there. We'll send you I'll send you a follow-up email after. That's great. Thank you. question here from Jill. Thank you, Jill. So Jill, you've commented on the amount of money for the Community Benefit Fund. You've said that £10,500 doesn't seem that great deal of money for the Community Fund. Also to take £2,000 of it out of school visits to promote the site and your company is wrong. Okay. Oh, sorry, where's that question gone? Can you go back and reassess this and also fund school visits yourself? Thanks, Jill. That is a good comment. Thanks very much. We appreciate these comments. That's the whole point of these public consultations. I think just to kind of give a bit of a backstory on the Community Benefit Fund. So the Community Benefit Fund, like I mentioned, is a voluntary one. It's not one that we have to do at all. It's not also one that all developers do. For the scale of what we're doing at the moment, because there aren't any subsidies available to us right now, this is why the benefit fund might not be as big as some previous ones, which were during the subsidy days. However, from our research, the money that we are offering is at the top level of developers at the £350 a megawatt mark. It's something that we can consider with the community, with the school funds. I'm not sure it's something that we'll be able to fund ourselves, but it is something obviously that we can have a look at a little bit further. So thanks very much for your comment, Jill. Another one from you, Jill. So the spatial options consultation shows the agricultural land as grade 1. How do you square this with your assessment of 3B? Thanks very much, Jill. So we have undertaken a agricultural land classification survey. Andrew, would you mind taking this one? I know it's one of your team members.
Absolutely, Chloe. No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you, Chloe. Thank you very much for the comment, Jill. As Chloe said, we've undertaken an agricultural land classification survey, which is essentially a piece of survey where a consultant who is adverse in undertaking these kind of surveys has gone out and undertaken soil testing across the whole of the 34 hectare site. And this involves testing it against the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, which is now DEFRA, Department of Fisheries for Rural Affairs, guidance, etc. And that's where we've come to the fact that the assessment's concluded that it's grade 3B rather than as the spatial options as illustrated grade 1. The reason for the grade 1 may be due to the fact that they've simply been using the agricultural land classification maps, which are a general guide, which are quite a large scale and on site specific and haven't been tested to a site specific level, hence the reason why there's two different grades illustrated for you. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, thanks, Bernard. Thank you for your responses. I'll be in touch. Yep, like I said, I encourage you all to get in touch if you have any further questions. A positive comment from Stephen. What could go wrong with an application like this? Well, we'll see. Thanks very much, Stephen, for your positive comment. Yeah, it'd be great for the environment and people of Rayleigh, and disappointing if the application failed. That's brilliant. Thank you. Chris, I think your question here is slightly unfinished. So feel free to type it again, or otherwise, please just get in touch with me and I'll speak to you directly. Another one from Craig here. So for clarity, is a potential 2,000 per annum for school visits part of or in addition to potential 10,500? It's part of, so it is included in that 10,500. Okay, I think that is all of our questions answered. I can't see that there are any more coming in. If you do have any questions or you'd like to speak to me directly, then please do. Thank you very much for your time, and I'd be grateful if you could complete our short survey, which I'll probably send out tomorrow. And if you have anything you would like to discuss further, then please do get in touch using the contact details seen here on your screen. As I have already mentioned, I'm happy to meet with any local residents to discuss any local concerns and potential views, so please do get in touch if you would find this useful. The slides will be available on the website after, and if you're watching the recorded version, you can find the feedback questionnaire on our webpage. Your personal details will not be passed on to any third parties and will only be used for the purpose of this public consultation. So thanks very much, and have a lovely evening. Yep, thanks very much again, and please do get in touch if you have any further questions. Great. Oh, we've just seen a question come in from Jill. Please consider a meeting with Rayleigh Town Council. Yes, we are indeed. We have already reached out to Rayleigh Town Council. There may be a few members on this webinar, and we'll be speaking to them directly regarding any subsequent meetings and discussions. Great. Thanks very much, everybody. Good night.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.